You're listening to the SoleStrategies podcast hosted by the team here at SoleStrategies. We hope you like the latest episode and thanks for tuning in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SoleStrategies podcast. I'm James Ray. James Gets Political on TikTok. And today we're going to be having a roundtable discussion about SoleStrategies and their recently completed New York operations with, well, basically a good amount of the crew. So how about, first of all, y'all go around and introduce yourselves.
My name is Ryan Vasquez. I'm the director of the New Jersey field office for Sole. I've been working for Sole for a few months now. It's a great new home. Just got through the intense New York primary season, and me and my partners here survived. So we're looking forward to sharing some war stories and, talking about what that was like today.
My name is Nate. I am a field captain, and I hopped on towards the end of the New York City campaign. And honestly, it was been some of the most fun campaigning I've done in my life. The candidates that we work for here are pretty amazing. And I came from a background of social work, and I've been in the Peace Corps, I've been in Madagascar, I've lived there for a year. So I love to build communities and work with people. And, that's what I made me to do here at SoleStrategies.
My name is Lorianne. I started out as a canvasser when I was 16. I've been doing this for 10 years. I went up and became a field captain. Currently, I am the director of client services, so I'm just here to maximize your satisfaction in your campaign and help you win.
Amazing. Okay, so in that case, let's get started. Just to start broadly, how was it? I mean, I know campaigning in New York can be unbelievably stressful, and at times it seems the chaos is relatively nonstop. So how do we feel looking back?
Well, it's good to be back. Now that the dust is settled on the races, I think that there comes a point in time where the days really start to bleed together. And the only day that you're really looking at the calendar is election day when it's all over. But that said, I think that every single race, we had about 25 to 30 races in the city this year, and every single race was different in its own respect, whether it was the diversity of the neighborhood that we were walking in, or the candidate, the platform of the candidate, the makeup of the candidate staff. So everybody has a very, very interesting story, and nobody's primary was the same for us at Sole in New York. And it was a pretty amazing thing to come together afterwards and talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, now that it's over, you're asking? How do we feel?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now that
it sucks, man. I want to be out campaigning again.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, it's a relief when it's all over, and you could really decompress. But I don't know, I'm ready.
Yeah, and I was talking to Z the other day, and I was like, hey, when are we getting back on doors? And she's like, well, Ryan, the general election is in November. And I'm like, no, I want to get back on doors now.
Right? If there are policy issues, come on, we got to build something, man.
Yeah, I knocked my neighbors the other day just for fun.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if the primary is in November, we should actually start door knocking now, because if you're looking to win, you would be out in the field now.
Yeah, now's the time to start getting organized.
Oh, 24/7 field campaigns should be the norm, honestly. I mean, we should get the money for it, obviously, but that's how it should happen.
I think too, part of the emotional roller coaster of campaigns is that right now we're wishing to be back on doors, and then once we're back on doors, we're going to be praying for election day. Oh my God, when is this going to be over? But that's part of the ebbs and flows of being on a field team that's as dynamic as this. We don't take races because they're easy. We take races because they're hard, and that's why people hire us. So it's a challenge. Every race is a puzzle, and when you're in the middle of it, it's oh God, I want this to end. I want to get through this. But then once it's gone, you miss it. It's
man. It's a nice race, right? It's crazy hard getting through it, and it sucks. But once it's over, it's damn, glad I did it.
No, I mean, it's a good way to be. I mean, I know I was on the ground just for a handful of days, and it seemed like a level of chaos that was just impressive in and of itself. I guess that's kind of the stereotype for New York City politics, but it seemed like we had overall a pretty good grasp of it, despite all of the challenges and despite all of the constant, just new things that were seemingly creeping up every 5 to 10 minutes, especially just during election day where I was there. I imagine is all the prep work and everything gets really, really difficult and very stressful for the team. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think that a lot goes into it, and the way that we run races at Sole is that a client will have one field captain, but the entire field department works on every race. So, we're constantly communicating back and forth, knocking theory off of each other, bouncing ideas off of each other. So you're not like here. You're not a part of one race. You're not just a part of the race that is your responsibility. Here, like realistically, you're a part of the entire New York primary. And like you talked about the changes. Like there are like last minute changes that happen on every campaign. But specifically this year, also like there was ranked choice voting. So it was a completely new dynamic, I think, for everybody involved. No matter how experienced you are, like nobody's seen a race like this because a race has never happened this way. So it was just something that was really special to be a part of.
Yeah, there's a
No,
lot
I mean,
of
do what?
I was just going to say, there are a lot of moving pieces going on. So it was a very challenging work. And it was cool working
No,
with
absolutely.
Souls,
And I
because,
mean,
like, we do have these individual candidates, but we are kind of spiderweb connected with all the resources that we share with each other.
No, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing too, is that specifically on election day, between ranked choice voting, coming out of a COVID pandemic, I mean, really not even coming out of it, but being in the middle of one. And then, even in the New York campaign this time around had just rain for a majority of the election day.
Yeah.
It's so many compounding factors that seem like they could just swamp and I guess just spread a campaign apparatus thin and cause just a lot of problems. And it feels like it gets handled pretty well by y'all, and it's impressive to say the very least. I mean, the team seems like it works very fluidly and very well together. There's obviously, like, to borrow corporate terminology, like a level of synergy that works really effectively on the ground. And it seems fascinating, the kind of the ground game that's deployed, especially for these different candidates. I mean, just in New York alone during election day, just the moving canvassers around, the strategy behind where to put them and why, and everything was constantly changing with every different factor, but we stayed on top of it in a way that was really, really fascinating, in my opinion. Moving from that, though, like, what borough do you feel like gave you all the most challenges? Because I feel like every borough has its own demons and every borough has its own advantages. But were there any in particular that really stood out to you for this election cycle?
Do you want to talk about RCV? Because you were everywhere. You were all over the whole city at once.
I actually worked for ranked choice voting, which was really fun because it wasn't like we worked for a candidate and we had to talk about any particular platforms. We just went and just expressed to people about how to vote. So it was exciting. The most challenging part was just being one person and managing 60 people in the same area.
Right.
But it was fun. It was lots of fun. Mainly it was just us bouncing around from borough to borough. As a canvasser, you struggle, like, you're out in the field all day doing the dirty work. You have to find a place where you can take a piss. You have to eat. You're literally out in the street. So, like, every time when we moved to a different area, people were like, "Well, I'm gonna pee now," and so that was the challenge. Being a door knocker for like 5 to 6 hours. That was a challenge. And we actually did double shifts. We worked for 5 to 10 hours a day. So. Those are the challenges I came across.
No, that's fair. I think working nearly half a day at a time would be considered at least a little bit of a challenge.
Sure.
Do what?
No, I agree with you. A 5-hour shift is like taxing enough. Like, you do 5-hour shift for 2 weeks straight. And like that's taxing. And Lori did 10-hour shifts.
10 hours
for
a day.
2 weeks straight.
Yes.
60 canvassers. That's, like, to me, it was mind blowing. At the time, I was in Staten Island, and Staten Island is a hard enough place to run a race, especially for progressive. And I was like, as hard as Staten Island is, I am thankful that I am not Lori Ann Gonzalez right now, because I would have quit 10 times over just because, like, that. There's no way that.
You worked all 14 days?
Yeah.
10 hours?
I took no days off.
That is crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Good for you. Good for you.
It's definitely an accomplishment. And that's the thing about field. Like, for field captains and field directors, it is an endurance test, right? And we're constantly, like, we're nuts. Like, I say this all the time, like, in order to enjoy this, you have to be a little messed up in the head. In order to have, like, a week straight of field and say, I want to go back, I want you to take a breather, sleep in a little bit tomorrow, and then put my sneakers on and go knock doors again, you have to be a little, like, twisted. And we're constantly, like, pushing ourselves, pushing that record, like, trying to beat our former limit of endurance. And I think for absolutely every field captain this year, we all beat our personal best. So that is something, like, that we're, like, as a field department, we're celebrating that, because I think that we just achieved a level of like a level of labor and a level of endurance that we leveled up. Like that's it. Like we for sure we evolved.
You like plan ahead. It's like, damn, okay, I'm taking a day off, and then next week I'm working 14-hour days, 14 days in a row. It's gonna be a fun time.
Yeah, I happen to know every public restroom in Staten Island.
It sounds crazy, but I loved everything. Like I loved being out in the field for that long and having that much canvassers because you come back with so many good responses from everybody. You know, you have more people to talk to.
For sure, big teams. Like, so let me ask you a question though. Like, do you prefer big teams or like small teams that you get to know over time? It's two different rushes.
I prefer intimate. Depending on the candidate, I prefer intimate campaigns where it's like 5 to 6 canvassers because you really get to go in detail and really get to know each person and what they're experiencing out in the field. You get to ask them all these questions and they can be more verbal with you and break down the details. Having 60 people, it's quite an audience.
For sure.
There's a huge difference between 6 and 60, man.
That's a lot of ponchos to hand out whenever it's.
I'm feeling like 12 is a good number.
12 is like a sweet spot.
Yeah, 12 is pretty solid to handle. It's like you get to know everybody over time, you know, and like it's pretty easy to manage still, pretty much.
And multiples of 4s work out because like you could fit everybody in cars, like in like canvassers' cars and stuff like that.
I love when
canvassers
cars.
Oh my god. Yeah.
You know, I think the one lesson I might have learned in my short stint in New York City was that if you have a car, you are infinitely more valuable than any student.
As long as you can drive it. As long as you can drive it.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, that's valid. Well, for a while, the whole idea of like, getting vans for canvassers, like even things like that, like just that little increase in mobility is so unbelievably critical for just even simple tasks of getting people where they need to be in a timely manner. Like it's insane how much even like the smallest little addition or the smallest like little increase in efficiency like has for getting canvassers where they need to be and increasing their reactivity on the ground.
Dude, in Staten Island, I had 2 canvassers that brought their skateboards every day. And literally skateboarded like off like around the turf in order to get there. Yeah, it was amazing. Yes, it's like skateboard team, how you doing? And they're practicing their like nollie pop shove-its on break and stuff, but they were actually moving through the doors pretty efficiently because Staten Island, like geographically, is all hills, and where we were walking specifically on the North Shore is like hills and neighborhoods that were built in the 1930s. And I guess in the 1930s, people had like different knee joints, like they could just walk differently or something like that. But like it is not conducive to a modern canvas at all.
So what you're saying is people in the 1930s were built differently?
Yeah, they were built. People in the 1930s were built differently.
They had some weird shit in the water, man, back then.
Yeah.
Well, at least we know we have canvassers who can efficiently get to where they gotta go in a timely
that's
manner.
for sure. Yeah, listen, if we got to figure it out, we do. And that was really like that's to me the overall moral of the story of this election is that like we proved to ourselves, to each other, and to all of our clients that if we've got to figure it out, like we're gonna hustle to figure it out because every single race had an element of hustling to figure it out, and that's what was so fun about it. Yeah,
sometimes, well, most of the times we were stuck with challenges where we didn't know how we was gonna go through it or get it done, but we did it. And we definitely applaud each other at the end of it all. We were so happy election day.
Yeah, for sure. Election night we got together and everybody looked like we were like stepping off like a boat from war. We're like, yo, you survived? Yeah, you survived. I survived. You survived. It was pretty great.
Yeah.
No, literally.
It was so funny to me watching because I was in on the last night after everything was over. Everyone was sitting down. It's just every single person came in looking just exhausted. Like I have never seen a group of people more happy about just being finished with a task than like the crew walking into that bar.
Hey, you're listening to the SoleStrategies podcast. Take a moment to listen to some of our esteemed champions and their takeaways from the program.
Thank you, Z and Michael and everybody else in SoleStrategies for reaching out and making sure that we are all part of something bigger and giving us the resources that we may not have even looked for.
Head over to SoleStrategies.com now to find out more information.
For sure. But like even still, if you remember the conversation of that night, James, like the politics doesn't stop. Like we're sitting.
Oh
at the
yeah,
table,
it was
and
I was cracking up about it because I sat down and the first thing was all just discussing like the exit polls and everything, and I was sitting there and the only thought I had is like, we're really never going to escape this hell. I mean, we're
no, we're talking about numbers and in ranked choices. Like, did they hit the victory threshold on the first round?
And like numbers are like flying around the table, and it's like, dude, I just want to like order a drink and then sleep for a week.
I was checking the numbers, man. I was looking at those numbers.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I was honestly, I was on my phone watching the polling numbers like a fucking hawk. Like I wanted to get every single vote that was counted. I was just ready to see what was happening. It was funny. Like you get addicted to poll watching almost.
Yeah, for sure. Especially on a day like
Election day. Like election day never goes right. You're always like falling behind. You're always trying to like catch up and keep on your number. And then you get there and you get to see how it all shakes out. Like it is very fun and very gratifying. It's like a humbling experience almost. I think by the time like everybody's race is over, they believe that they're gonna win. We've been saying the candidate's name like 10,000 times in the election cycle. We see their face every day. The colors, like I never want to see my candidate's colors ever again. Like, and it gets drilled into you, right? And then on election day, you come back together with the group, and everybody's just like watching the numbers come in, like watching the history of this year's election unfold in real time. And it was something that we're a part of. It's something that we're bought into, both like physically, like having had worked it and being that exhausted, and then emotionally, like giving that our all and recruiting a team and communicating with the candidates team every day, that to see it wrap up, win or lose, is always a surreal experience.
No, absolutely. I mean, building off of that, actually, were there campaign agendas that surprised you, or just like campaign actions, like especially like during election day or moving towards, that kind of surprised you, or like maybe impressed you or threw you off a bit?
I was surprised none of the candidates won.
Yeah.
There got to a point where I knocked on my mom's door and I was about to pitch ranked choice voting to her, and I'm like, "Wait, what was I doing?"
That's funny. That's
but
funny.
Yeah, that's one curveball I didn't expect.
I think for me, one thing that surprised me about my race was like originally we were contracted for the race to end for the contract to end the day before election day. So like on election day, like on the day before election day, I said goodbye to all my workers. I was like, all right, guys, like it's been great. Like this was a blast. Thanks. I'll let you know if we won or lost tomorrow night. And then that night, the client extended. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, you guys are doing right by this. Because like for me, like I went through that whole program wondering like, what are we going to do on election day? Are we going to be a part of it? And then on E-Day, the team actually got to go back and be a part of it. So that was something that surprised me, but didn't surprise me. I thought that they would come through at the end, but I was a little surprised that it took that long for them to actually choose like a visibility piece on election day, because that's really important.
It is extremely important.
No, I mean, that makes sense to me. I mean, you know, moving from that, what was your overall take on the primary elections for the candidates you worked for? You know, what was on the ground? What were observations you were making? What were things you were thinking while everything was going on?
Staten Island is as conservative as everyone says it is. For sure. And that's why, like, I personally wasn't too surprised that our candidate wasn't victorious in Staten Island, because she was a true blue, like, real deal progressive. And I think that she actually, like, won. I'm sure that she got beat out by the guy who spent, like, the entirety of his career in smoke-filled rooms, like, kind of wheeling and dealing, like, in an old boys club type situation, which to me is like, that's, if a Democrat is going to win a primary in Staten Island, that Democrat is going to win the primary in Staten Island.
Staten Island really does elevate the worst of us, and it's a beautiful thing to see. Sure.
I'm from New Jersey. I can say that Staten Island is the New Jersey of New York, and I love it. It's like super, super proud. Everybody hates on it, kind of like for no reason, because it's actually like, it's, listen, like it's. Like we were on the North Shore, right, which is like a mix of like mansions and like Wu-Tang history. So to me, like, it was a nice race to like be a part of. Like, I enjoyed the neighborhoods that we were walking in, like across the North Shore. it was cool for me. And Staten Islanders are like really, really proud people. They're an ethnicity within themselves. And the Staten Islanders they are a proud people. It was very, very interesting to be a part of it and to just realize that like there are parts of the city that aren't how the city gets stereotyped. Like there are parts of the city that don't look like Midtown Manhattan or Brooklyn, or the Bronx or Queens. So it's Staten. It's its own thing. It's its own universe.
What does it look like?
What does it look like?
Suburbs?
Like Jersey, to be honest.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the candidates that we worked for could have did a lot better had they focused more on visibility and actually being out inside the communities themselves, with the canvassers.
Yeah, that's something that is important that I think gets overlooked so much on campaigns. Like, you put like a paid element out in the field. The number one thing that supplements that paid element is you as a candidate showing your face and knocking with them.
Yeah.
It's like the general has to go to war with the troops. Like if that doesn't happen, it's not conducive to victory. It doesn't make sense. And we had some candidates that got out and knocked, but we had a lot of candidates that didn't get out and knock.
And the ones that actually went out, they did a lot better than the ones who didn't. So that goes to show a lot.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, there were a handful of candidates I actually saw running around from polling location to polling location, just shaking hands with everybody, saying hello. And they seemed like people had better reception of them than even just campaign workers. Because you can say no to someone who's paid basically or someone who's volunteering on a campaign, but it's harder, I guess, to say no or just like immediately just walk away from like the actual candidate themselves. That fosters better conversations too, of course. For sure. But, with all of those things considered, is there anything you all would consider doing different looking back? Hindsight's 2020, so I assume that you've probably thought of at least one or two things.
When I hear the term hindsight is 2020, I feel like a future time traveler gave us that saying to warn us, like,
That's 100% true.
Wow, you just blew my mind. Interview over. Podcast over.
The government's coming
I need
after
to go
this.
home
They
and
found
think.
out the truth.
I feel like something that I probably would have did differently is really pitching to candidates about visibility, and then going for door knocking. And right after door knocking, phone banking those people we just door knocked, so you can guarantee get those votes. Just always having something done for that voter to pin it in their head, whether to go out and vote for them and then especially now with ranked choice voting, there's so much opportunity for a candidate to get a vote. You have like 5 chances to get a vote, right, with ranked choice voting. So visibility, more visibility, and door knocking, and right after door knocking, just really phone banking. I think pitching that to candidates would really had helped them.
Definitely a VR campaign, voter registration. I think that's super important, especially in these kind of communities where we're trying to push a progressive firebrand that's trying to take down some entrenched asshole, basically. You need everybody registered to vote, so you should really try to plan that however you can, before you even know that you're going to run, honestly.
Yeah,
that is actually really good.
I mean, hey man,
Oculus.
Maybe in elections one day, I don't know.
Get everybody on VR chat and then hold like a symposium and nobody has to leave their home so they can hear you.
What, dude? 100%. That is actually happening.
Okay,
one day,
for sure.
These VR political rallies, 100%, man.
Oh yeah, that's on its way.
Yeah. But then you interact with the candidate. You can punch him and shoot him with the blue
Yeah,
darts.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throw darts at the candidates you don't like.
You
Yeah.
get the team if we say something stupid, or you get
Right.
the banana if we like it.
Yeah, no. And then you still get arrested in real life if you throw the banana at the candidate in the game. God, this could be a good future, man.
I think that if I could have done anything different, or if the candidates that we worked for could have done anything different, I think one thing that they don't think about when they contract us is that they know the turf better than we ever will, because you are literally running to be a council person or to lead a constituency in this area. 9 times out of 10 you were born and raised and went to the schools in this area. Tell me that there are hills, bro. Tell me that there are hills. Tell me that when it rains this place floods. Tell me I'm gonna need a van, right? Because honestly, listen, we're adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
But the less we have to adapt, the faster we get to a point of efficiency.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, that's the overall goal, is to like reach a point of efficiency. And then once you reach that point, like do better every day. So like for me, like my personal, like the way that I do field for me is that I start timing myself. I time my rollouts, like from the moment that the van leaves the meetup spot, like what time did the last canvasser leave the van? And if it took me 25 minutes to roll everyone out, like tomorrow I'm trying to do it 2 minutes faster. Right? And like the lead up before election day is trying to beat yourself and challenge yourself in that way.
Every minute's crucial.
But you have to get to that point of building a system that's like, all right, this is the system that I'm going to rock with and try to improve over time.
Yeah.
And like, if you need a van and you don't start with a van, like you're going to spend your first week realizing that you need a van. So it's the job. It's like the job of really the candidate and the staff to come in and say like, look, this is the area. We're trying to support you as best as possible. And a lot of times what winds up happening is that paid field comes in and they're like, all right, like you guys are the professionals, figure it out, when like a decent conversation would like set us a world apart in terms of preparation.
No, I mean, and that's totally fair. To be cognizant of y'all's time, I think we're getting close to closing up. But before we do, are there any closing thoughts on y'all's end? Anything, wisdom you'd like to impart, lessons you learned, anything of that nature?
I shouldn't have dropped out of the mayoral race. Saying like that.
You're running this one?
I was running this one. I took a couple votes from some big people, so I'm just proud of that. My name was
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I think moving forward, we do really want to pitch our experience to candidates. And I've been a canvasser for so long, and I've noticed that when I door knock, it becomes a lot easier when the candidate is actually outside doing visibility work and making he or she known in the community, because then we get way better conversations at the door. And then even after door knocking, having a lot of people door knock and being very successful at that, phone banking becomes a lot easier. So just doing visibility work really, really, really helps as a canvasser. So knowing that, I really would pitch that to candidates, just candidates actually being out there with canvassers, doing door knocking, phone banking, all together, like a triple package. They can't just do one without the other. It has to be all three done together.
I think if I learned one thing, it's that if you're doing a race in Staten Island and it rains, don't take Slauson Avenue to the expressway, because that shit floods and you will flood your van and you'll be stuck for an hour. And then, just some insight for anybody who's listening who might be doing a race there. But if I did learn like one thing, it is for me personally, like my lesson, like if I grew in this, it was that being a more empathetic and like understanding field captain, and like in the heat wave, give them a 40-minute break, not a half-hour break. And like allow them to recharge, care about them, check in on them not from a place of like holding them accountable, but check in on them from a place of like, I care about you and are you okay? Because it's freaking hot out and we're climbing hills and things like that. If you create that kind of a vibe on your race, I think that what you get from the canvassers is just like a 10-fold deeper buy-in than you will ever get from people who you treat like workers. And that was a huge like I learned that the day after election day, when like all of the like Staten Island crew got together afterwards, and like we're talking like we're doing now, talking war stories about the race and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, like family, like this is nice. And because of that, like I can honestly look back at that crew and say that was like in my entire career, that was my most favorite crew that I've ever worked with. And it was because we all cared about each other. We created that vibe. So win or loss, it was a good time.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would like to share with candidates is the importance of making your canvassers feel acknowledged, because the more you actually show empathy and care for your canvassers, they actually make things happen for you. They knock on doors and make sure these voters are knowing your name and are going to vote for you, and they bring back better responses from people.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a passion project kind of job, And
Yes.
I do this because I love the project. I love the Progressive Project. I know not everybody working for me, all these canvassers, are going to feel the same way, but it's our job as our team to really build them up. And even if they aren't as passionate about getting like our candidate X elected because like he loves Medicare for all or something, they're still going to go out and do an awesome job because they care about you as a field captain and their team members as, you know, friends perhaps, and the company because we have their back as a whole. And yeah, I mean, I love what Ryan just said because it really is the difference between a canvassing company who puts people out on the field, doesn't give them any info, and just kind of like lets them loose, which I've seen. I've seen.
There's way more of them than there are of
sucks
others.
for them. I've talked to them on the field. I'm out here with my team having a blast because we love what we're doing.
Yeah.
And they're advocating for a different candidate, and they just like don't care whatsoever. And that sucks, man. That really, really blows because this is a special job, and if you could get your canvassers psyched, even if they don't give a shit about the politics, goddamn, that's a really cool thing when you get a team together. And really push forward. So yeah, that's
true.
The end.
Well, okay. I mean, that amazing advice and insight. I appreciate all of you coming on today. Once again, everyone, this is the SoleStrategies podcast. I'm James Ray. This has been a discussion of SoleStrategies' recently completed New York operations. Thank you, everybody, for signing in.
Thanks, James.
Thank you, sir.